Get out your shotgun, boys and girls, and be prepared to let loose, because in this crime thriller, you won't know who your friends or enemies are going to be until you are dead and being dragged across concrete. This is Media Channels, a multimedia corp production, bringing you information about the latest media trends, helpful tutorials, and commentary on the digital world around you. Welcome everyone, my name is Stewart, hosting episode number 25 of the Media Channels podcast on August the 18th, 2019. In today's episode, we will review Dragged Across Concrete. This is Ken's pick for the episode, and I also have Ken and Rasto joining me for our usual movie review fiasco. Thanks for joining me today, boys.
Thanks, Stu. Hey, Rasto.
Hi, guys.
Hello there. So for today's episode, the topics we're going to be covering are very similar to what we normally do. So in category 1, we have style, the theatrical points and directing. Then we have special effects and its associated action scenes. Then we have cast, the plot and story, our overall opinion and rating out of 10 as the final category. So Dragged Across Concrete is a 2018 American crime thriller written and directed by S. Craig Zahler. I'm not sure if that's pronounced right, but can correct me if it's not. It does have a R rating, so viewers do be advised. And as well, some of the big names in the movie or the cast are Mel Gibson, Vince Vaughn, and Tory Kittles. We also have, of course, Udo Kier for his cameo appearance, which seems to be in every movie for some reason, kind of like in Marvel movies. We also have Brent and Anthony, who are the main characters, who are a pair of officers, I should say, working the urban scene as detectives in the city of Bulwark. So Mel Gibson is the older of the two, and he has his hands full in this somewhat dark but interesting retell of the cop gone rogue. So Ken, I know this is your pick, and there's probably a few things you want to say about the movie before we get into the individual categories.
Yeah, there are a few things I'd like to say. The director S. Craig Zahler, he's directed a couple of other films before this one. He made Bone Tomahawk and Brawl in Cell Block 99, both of which were actually released unrated. This is his first movie to receive an actual rating from the Motion Picture Association of America, even though it's still plenty. Well, in the later stages of the story, it's pretty brutal, as we all found out. He works on a very low, really tight budgetary frame. This one, I think, was made for only $18 million. Sounds kind of weird, but that's how much it cost. Mm-hmm. The director Zahler, he isn't looking to make films that are, safe and easily, I guess, digestible by the masses. He likes to get into, I guess, the compromises and the struggles of dealing with more underground elements of society. Right. And as we see in this one, in Brawl in Cell Block 99, and Bone Tomahawk, which is actually a Western. Mm-hmm. That was really, I don't know if you guys have seen that one yet, but I have, and I was pretty shocked by one scene in that one as well. And that one starred Kurt Russell, and that dealt with the harsh realities of the Western, the frontier. He's also a writer, and in my opinion, he comes up with some of the best story or book or film titles in Hollywood. I mean, like Bone Tomahawk, Dragged Across Concrete, Brawl in Cell Block 99. And he also wrote, I believe it's a Western called Wraiths of the Broken Land, which I think may be being directed by Ridley Scott. Okay. Sometime it's still in development right now, but it has been talked about. And he's not a filmmaker who wants to make something really splashy and full of candy and coloring,
Right, definitely. Yeah.
bright color schemes. He's more of a throwback to directors from the 60s and 70s like Sam Peckinpah or John Milius.
Okay. Now,
That's his inspiration.
yeah. Now I understand that this was a limited theatrical release as well. Can you expand on that, or?
Yeah, it was a very limited theatrical release. It played several film festivals. I'm not sure which ones. I think it was nominated for a Saturn Award, which I believe is the United UK Science Fiction or Genre Film Awards. And it's not, as I was saying before, it's not really a big Hollywood blockbuster. So it's more of an art house appeal, or I guess I believe it'll be a cult movie in the future. It'll be a cult favorite.
Okay.
So I don't think it was ever expected to really make bucket loads of cash. It was just out there to present a vision.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, that's a pretty good summarization. So I guess we're going to get into the categories now. And now, I'm not sure who went last time. I think Ken went first last time. So maybe it's Rasto's. We'll put you on the spotlight for category 1, if you don't mind, Rasto.
I don't. Well, I was watching it 2 times, this movie, and I actually really like the style. You can categorize this movie as a B movie and very, very realistic crime drama. Very realistic. And we already talked about the story, so I don't have to repeat that. But I like how the story is systemized, because basically you have a very first scene where we establish that Henry is coming out of the jail.
Mm-hmm.
Then we are also, we're seeing like situation in his family and with his mother and brother. Mother is selling her body, brother is on the wheelchair because of him. And then we have this cut, 3 weeks later. And we have this huge part of the movie, which is basically 2 anti-hero cops are getting suspended because of the brutal interrogation. And then we have this very long stakeout. They decide to earn money in any means necessary. Basically, they're going to the kind of like dark path, And then we have the end, they say 11 months later, and movie finishes basically. So I like how the movie is systemized, very, very systematic, and yet it is not predictable. You get surprised in this movie. Plus, also I like the basically 3 basic groups in this movie. You have the Henry and Biscuit. That's one group. Mm-hmm. Those are the typical, thugs from the city. Willing to do anything, but they are not killers. Then we have this Vogel. What was his name? Fogelman. And 2 guys. One is called Black Glouse, and another one is called Gray Glouse. That's another significant group. Mm-hmm. And they are killers. They are very kind of over sadistic. They're killing people. They are violent, and they don't care. It seems to me like, I don't know your opinion, but it seems to me like kind of like group of some paramilitary group, or maybe they used to be soldiers or something like that. And then you have the 3rd group. That's 2 cops, Ridgeman and Lurasetti.
Right.
So that's what I liked about this movie. It's nice, systemized, and also what I liked about this movie is the mood of the movie. If you notice the colors,
Yeah.
how the settings are colored,
Hmm.
the cinematography, all those scenes, basically very calm and slowly developing the uh, characters of the people who are in this movie. So, and also very interesting in this style is that he's developing the characters through the other characters. You have those short scenes, like you have the Jennifer Carpenter. She's in the movie 5 minutes, but she tells a lot about the Fogelman group, and she tells a lot about also the Henry and Biscuit. Also, you have this short scene with Udo Kier, of course, and it tells you a lot about the Bridgman.
Yeah.
Also, you have the scene Lou Rassetti buying the ring, so that's why the movie is so long, but it's not bothering. I was actually really engaged and I liked the movie very much. I didn't get bored 1 second of the movie, so that's what I like.
That's
I think the style is very very nice, and he developed. I didn't see the other two movies, the Bone Tomahawk or Brawl in the 99 Cell, whatever, and I don't know if he used the same style, but I really like the style of this guy, and I'll be in watching if he's going to make some other movie, and I for sure will be watching that movie.
okay. Um,
So
I do have a couple counterpoints. However, before I tell you my opinion on what you had said, I think I'll let Ken go first. That way, I can kind of sum up what you both I think are going the same direction. But anyways, did you want to go ahead, Ken, or?
Sure. I have a few things I can talk about here. Actually, I'd like to say that's an excellent observation by Rasto about how the characters reveal themselves by their interactions with each other. I was going to say that Zahler, he's very good at revealing the small character details through the dialogues that they have with each other. The example I was thinking of was when Brett Ridgman and his wife Melanie are talking about how tough their daughter is after she got sort of accosted by some street youths, and
Mhm.
then Brett Ridgman says that she's tough because she's got two sets of cop DNA in her, and that's how
Hmm.
we find out. Like his wife Melanie has multiple sclerosis and can't work anymore, but we find out through that little bit of dialogue, we find out she used to be uh, on the force as well, and you know, as Ross was saying, there's a lot of style and a lot of mood, but there's not very much music other than a number of songs which are actually written and composed by Zahler and his working partner Jeff Harriet,
Hmm.
and a few of them are sung by the soul group the OJs.
Hmm.
Um, he's also uses the film as a commentary on how there's a lot of difficulties on getting by in modern life and how you have to make compromises. That I think that's what the main theme
I would agree.
people trying to get backed in the corner and trying to get by. Like Lurisetti, he's not in a bad situation, but he's trying to marry. He's about to propose to his girlfriend, who is kind of higher on the social status or social hierarchy than he is. She works for some. I don't remember what kind of firm she works for, but it sounded like it was a security consulting firm. But she has a really nice place and she dresses well and is obviously a established professional.
Right.
And Lurisetti, he's a detective, but he doesn't make a bucket load of cash, and he's trying to build a life with her. Zoller, he's not very interested in being too politically correct. He's interested more in highlighting different levels of operation in society and how they interact with each other if they fall into each other's orbit, I guess you would say. Like I said, it's not politically correct, but it does make you think about where we fit into the world. And the thing is, there's been some talk made about how there's elements of racism in the movie, and
Yep.
there are a few remarks, but the thing is, you never actually hear Ridgman and Lurisetti use racial slurs in the film. Well, the only time is near the end when the character of Henry, he gets over he and Ridgman are in they're having hand-to-hand combat, and Ridgman overpowers him. and Henry calls him the N-word, and Ridgman just says likewise. He doesn't actually use a racial slur.
Okay. There was another scene near the end. I don't know if you caught it. They were in the van, and they were cutting open, I guess, one of the bad guys' stomach. I don't know if you caught that comment or not.
I did, yeah. I know the
Okay.
one you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't talk about that in case we want to get into spoiler territory again.
yeah, right. So, I mean, there was. It's. I think it's okay in the film because of the amount of realism that it's trying to portray. So I don't. It's not
Right,
there
yeah.
there to get people upset. It's just there as to try to make it more realistic in everyday life.
Yeah,
I
just
think.
very gritty, and like that's what people would probably say,
Right.
or those type of underworld personalities, I suppose you would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right.
Okay. Did you have some more, or can I start to go into my commentary?
I think we are ready to hear your commentary.
Okay, and then if you want to comment on what I have to say as well, please go ahead. But one thing I found very distracting about the style is I think about the first half in the movie. Now, the lighting I found to be unnecessarily and overly dark. I found it distracting to the point that I found it a little bit hard to follow what was going on because I was concentrating so much on trying to figure out what was going on in the dark than actually picking up on the story. Now, I don't know if you two noticed that as well, but for some reason, about midway through the movie, it picked up. So I don't know if it's because the budget was low and they made some choices to go for some of the lighting, or if it was intentional that he wanted it really dark to make it in a way as a plot point. But I don't think it was really necessary to make it. Like a lot of older movies managed to have that dark feeling and realistic feeling without having to go overly dark in the lighting department. What are your thoughts on that?
If I can, I think this movie can be defined as noir category. Actually neo-noir category, right? So if you see any old noir, I don't know how to pronounce it, noir, I guess, noir, right?
Film noir.
Noir, right? So if you see any older noir, films, it's like that, basically. You have basically very, very calm camera, very still camera. You have protagonists, and you have some color that would take you to some sort of like bleak mood, because you need to get there, because it's nothing, there is nothing comedic or humorous about this movie. Even you have few one-liners that might be considered, a little bit funny, but not really, So the movie is about this big city reality, So I found it very suitable, for this movie. I don't know. I was actually, like thinking to myself, like, this is really good, You have this green, then you have this blue mood, and there is a little bit of light, the day scenes. So I think it was. I think it was suitable for this movie. I don't know about how Ken found it, but
do you agree with me, or do you more agree with Rasto on this point, Ken?
I sort of agree more with Rasto because I was sort of prepared for the lighting to be low, like this. I guess you're referring to the scenes on the street during the dark when they're starting their stakeouts, and it's like sodium street lighting.
Yes, and actually, especially at the beginning. The first couple scenes I found to be, I'm trying to, maybe it's because I'm looking for detail in the movie, but I just found I was just distracted by, I mean, I know I'm supposed to be concentrating more on the characters, but I'm the kind of guy that likes to look at the details as well in the background to maybe pick out.
Oh yeah, understandable.
So,
Yeah. It didn't bother me. I guess like you were saying, I was concentrating more on the characters, but I guess I've seen enough films in the noir style that it doesn't bother me, I guess.
Okay. All right. I guess
I'm not trying to say that I'm more elevated and refined than you are as a person, because we know that's not true by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm being ousted. I'm being ousted here. It's 2 versus 1.
No.
Wait. Here we go.
Oh.
I've been dragged across concrete.
Oh, so corny, but
yeah, that's
so
right.
good.
Yeah. The other point I was going to mention too about the style and the theatrical points was let me find my notes here. I don't want to give away the ending, but I found that I wasn't, for a good part of the movie, I wasn't able to determine who was the protagonist and who was the antagonist. I found that at the start, the 2 main characters, okay, they're probably doing the good thing, but then as the movie gone on, I found that maybe they're not, and then they came back, and then they're not, and I found that with the other character too. I believe it was Henry, right? Was the gentleman who was in jail?
Yeah, that's Henry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that I couldn't quite figure out what his role was in the movie either until later. Now that might have been intentional direction of the movie to kind of bring us more into it. But I found that I didn't understand his point in the movie as well, and I thought maybe they could have maybe explained a little better at the start how he was going to be involved in the plot of the movie, but maybe that's just me.
Well, like I said, there are three groups of the, like 3 basic groups, and we are watching how they, they are basically all protagonists. I don't think you have good guys and bad guys in this movie, because all of them are pretty nasty,
Right, and that's
you have dirty cops, you have 2 thugs from city, and then you have 3 psychos basically, so we are we are watching, how they what they're gonna do, we are watching how the story is developing, so they are the main characters, and then in the end we see, how the psycho group, they are gone basically, right? So, and Henry and Biscuit, Henry survives, and Henry makes a good life for him. The other group, they are both basically, there's plenty of corpses actually.
Wait. Here we go. Plenty of corpses. Here we go.
Yes,
exactly. So most of the main characters are gone basically. So only one who survives is Henry.
Yeah. Well,
that's why you can say he's the main.
Spoiler alert.
That's okay.
Oops, we did it again.
That's
okay. Anyway, so so we'll have to agree to disagree, but I guess we can move on to the next category now, with special effects in the action. Now this is going to be a little bit of shorter category. So Ken, go ahead, and it was your suggestion to add the action into our midst here, so please elaborate.
Okay. Well, it takes, as we were talking about before, it's kind of a slow burn movie. It's very deliberate in its pacing. It takes its time to get to the more suspenseful sequences. I guess about halfway in, really, starting with the bank heist. But once it does, the action is very tightly choreographed. It can be very brutal at times and very abrupt, but as Rasto was saying, you can't look away. It's never boring.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some unexpected turns and twists in the action scenes. The one sequence that surprised me the most was when they finally get to the gas station where they're going to offload the bullion, and Henry and Biscuit and the 3 psychos, I guess we're going to call them from here on out, Vogelman and his associates,
Mm-hmm.
and then Henry and Biscuit decide to try and turn the tables, and then one character there's an exchange of gunfire where Biscuit tries to overpower one of the Vogelman's associates. I can't remember if it was Gray Gloves or Black Gloves,
Mm-hmm.
but they each both fall out of the side of the van door, each door of the van that they're driving, and let's just say there's a creative use of a machine gun with the bullets being used ricocheted in a geometrical math problem, I guess you could say. I think that's as far as I'll go.
That's as far as you'll go. Okay.
Yeah, I probably said too much already, but I think you're gonna have to put a spoiler. I think you're gonna have to put a spoiler warning on this review, Stu.
I think it's okay. I mean, it's not like it was released a few weeks ago or anything. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, true. But there are several surprises in this film that I think people will enjoy. And as far as the effects go, it's not like a over the top gore fest. Again, it's more about unexpected and shocking, instances, and the makeup effects in those. Well, the one sequence in the bank, it's very much a throwback to the '80s style of exploitation. I guess gore, and it's not like a Friday the 13th type bloodbath, but it's very abrupt and shocking. And also the one part with near the end with one character being, let's say, operated on post-mortem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely rated R. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised he got an R rating, to be honest. But again, the action and the gunfight scenes and the fight scenes, they're not overly stylized like some typical Hollywood films. They're very, abrupt, they're very to the point, and
yeah, I would say so. The special effects, everything was very deliberate. I found in the movie. I mean, well thought out, I think.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely. Very well planned out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you have nothing else, we'll go over to Rasto then.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead.
I will. About the effects, I found very interesting and not really surprising that there was no score during this movie, no music. Basically, you have music only at the beginning, at the end, and then you have music when they play the radio, in their cars. Then you have some music, but basically the movie is without the music, which is not a new thing. When you consider the French New Wave and older movies from '60s, you would find this style, and this is something to emphasize to the story. Did you notice the effects, like sound effects, like that creaking sound when they are sitting on the leather seats in the car? You can hear that creaking, or
Right.
or when the wife or Richmond's wife is opening that packet. You can hear the sound of the knife and tearing the tape, and so I found it really, really nice and really going to the mood. Again, I must say this. Again, is going to the mood of the story, basically stressing the sounds. I found it very interesting, this style. Also, we were talking about the colors, and that's also very, very interesting. And you have lots of double stunts. You have the other guys doing some jumps and some scenes. Maybe I guess Mel Gibson, he's bit older, and so you have some special effects like they were doubled. Also, I found very nice the finger effect, and that was actually the cruelty of the psycho crowd. Carpenter coming to work the very first day. She's a mother.
Right.
She's fresh mother. There is a nice husband, a nice family, whatever, and then suddenly they just she's just gone, and you have this finger gone. So like you said, there is not very much like graphic effects, but I found the very fact that there is no music and the colors and a few athletic, let's say, scenes. Also very nice, like you said, Ken, this submachine gun, like very like fast bursts
Right.
of the bullets. That was really interesting. So not very much effects, but those which are there are very, very nicely done.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say one thing I'm gonna say is in reply to your comment about the no background music. I think it's kind of funny in this movie because normally to make a good movie you need good background music and that helps drive the mood of the movie. But in this particular scenario, he managed to somehow get the mood across without the background music, and maybe that's part of the reason why I found the first part of the movie distracting is because of there was no background, well, very little anyways, and it was almost like watching something unfold in real life. So watching a security camera, for instance, and it's not literally like that, but the fact that there was no music, somehow he made it work. I'm not sure how he did, but usually that's a very big thing in movies, and without that background music, it's hard to drive the mood. As for the action scenes, I found it slow at the start, but once it picked up, I really enjoyed what was happening. I think once they started into part of the stakeout and they were investigating more what was going with into the plot, that's when I started felt like I was more engaged, and the action scenes helped me with that as well. So I mean, that's all I have really to say about that category. I don't know if either of you had anything, but
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. And yeah, what you said about the background music, the lack of, I think it's more, I think Zahler wants us to feel more like we're sort of walking side by side with these characters and being dropped into their reality, as opposed to, like, say, an Avengers movie where you're watching all the Avengers face off against Thanos and it's grand and operatic and
right.
grandiose or whatever. It's not like this isn't supposed to be a grand, photo play, I guess you could say. It's a very, I guess you would say, close up, I guess, more personal story. So it's not the sort of film that calls for, dramatic music cues like da da da.
Exactly, and I think Zahler is focusing on the dialogue, because I must admit there was very smart dialogue. It wasn't some stupid talk. It was nice dialogue and developing the character. Kind of, they were expressing their opinions on things and so on. So it wasn't necessary to have the music at all, beside the beginning and the end, So I think that was, like you said, we are walking side by side the characters, plus we are listening what they have to say. I think that's why the younger generation didn't really appreciate this movie, and I mean, the Richman character himself, he said he was not very happy with the younger generation. That's we can hear that in one of the dialogues.
Yeah.
Mhm. All
But
right.
actually, I'm thinking there it was kind of funny in the one point very near the end where Henry, of course, he's from the projects or whatever, or the urban ghetto, and he speaks in that style of dialect, I guess you would say. And Richmond corrects him on his pronunciation and says, and Henry asks him, or something to the effect of if he's some kind of elementary teacher. And Richmond replies, "No, you're smarter than you're. I've noticed you're a lot smarter than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's smarter than the way in which he speaks."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and then he said it's good to be underestimated. Henry said it's good to be underestimated.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so really, I think really clever dialogue in this movie.
Yeah, there was a number of what I'm not going to say one-liners, maybe some of them were paragraphs, but they had a number of one-liners that were very dry, so that you would have to actually. But the pace of the movie was slow enough that you could pick them up without missing them as well. So there's a nice touch to that. So what I think we're going to do is move on to the cast now, and obviously
right.
we have Mel Gibson, making a bit of a comeback. He hasn't done a lot in recent years, and we also have Vince, who has been in other movies as well. So I mean, I think the choice of cast was good. I mean, obviously Mel Gibson has done a lot of movies that are very sort of dark, or movies that are, I guess, cop movies, as you would say, with his history in that. He's done a lot in that area. So I think the cast choice is good. What are your thoughts on it, Ken or Rasto?
Do you want me to go?
Sure.
Okay. My thoughts on it are I agree. The cast is excellent. Mel Gibson was actually sort of brought into the fold of this project by Vince Vaughn when they were working on Hacksaw Ridge together back, I guess, a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Which, of course, Mel Gibson was the director. Vince Vaughn approached him with the script for this film, and he sort of talked, because he had worked with Zahler. Vince Vaughn played the main character in Brawl in Cell Block 99.
Right.
He talked to Gibson. He showed Gibson the script and talked to him about Zahler as a filmmaker, and Gibson bought in, and he was in on the project.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and Gibson and Vaughn, they're really good together. Their relationship is sometimes tense, but they're able to rely on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Ridgman, as he's played by Gibson, he's sort of the polar opposite of, like, say, his character is Martin Riggs from the Lethal Weapon series.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty quiet. He's very observant, and he's been kind of beaten down by the realities of his life and how, he and Anthony Lurisetti, they've been suspended from the force because of a interrogation that they conducted on a stairwell. And it was recorded by a civilian with a cell phone, and the video got sent to the local news channel. And that's what results in their suspension. And by the way, Don Johnson plays their lieutenant.
Right.
And he explains to Gibson about how, he says, this is where the title of the movie comes from, is when he says Gibson has been scuffing concrete for too long. Like, he's too much of a ground level worker and doesn't know how to play the political game.
That's right. I mean, that's the whole
right.
reason why they were suspended, because they're being accused as racists. There was the lieutenant had said, being accused of a racist today is the same as being compared to a communist from the 50s. So, you have that point as well.
Yeah. They operate in a very controlled environment, and they don't feel they'll get the results that they need to apprehend criminals by operating within that framework. And as I said, Vaughn is he's younger with more options, and he wants to get married to his girlfriend. And Ridgman feels a bit more backed into a corner because he's been suspended. It was 6 weeks without pay they were suspended, and his wife has multiple sclerosis, and his daughter's being harassed on her way home from school every day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still the same rank of detective as he was when he was 27, and he's closing in on being 60. So he feels a bit more backed into a corner,
Right.
and that's why he decides to talk to his contact, of course, our friend Mr. Udo Kier, who actually Gibson arrested his son, or Gibson's character arrested his son, but he kind of went easy on him so he could use Udo Kier's character for information later on down the line, which he does, and he finds out about this upcoming heist.
Yep.
So he prefers to use I guess you would say, the old school method of finding out how to get the criminals off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
then on sort of the counterpoint of those two, you have Tory Kittles as Henry and Michael J. White as Biscuit. They're sort of the counterpoints to Ridgman and Lorenzetti, except they operate in a different level of society. I guess you would say the underworld, and they don't have so many people overseeing what they do.
Right.
I mean, they have people overseeing them who would just, if they screwed up or stepped wrong, they would just be blinked out of existence.
Mm-hmm.
They won't get suspended without pay or whatever. They'll just be vanished. And they're both very good as well. They have a very good I guess you would say, brotherly like relationship together. And again, they can, like Lorenzetti and or Ridgman and Lorenzetti, they can rely on each other right up to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have the other players like Jennifer Carpenter. She sort of seems like a random character at first, but then she sort of falls into the sights of Vogelman and his associates, because she works at the bank they decide to rob.
Right.
And she, of course, things don't go all that well. And of course, you have all the other players, like I believe it's Laurie Holden who plays Ridgman's wife.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure of the young lady who plays his daughter, but she carries herself very well as well.
Okay.
And all the various other secondary characters. So the casting was great.
Yeah.
I thought.
Okay. Rasto, would you like to just share your thoughts?
Yes, I completely agree with Ken. The casting was excellent. I mean, Mel Gibson, he's very experienced in playing cops, in cops roles, as well as I'm not sure about Vince. Was he ever playing a cop in the movie?
He played one in
so.
True Detective. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He wasn't a cop in True Detective season 2. I'm sure he must have done, but I can't recall at the moment.
Yeah, and of course Don Johnson, of course. I mean, he's also experienced cop. He was in the show for so many years, Miami Vice, I think.
Right.
And as well as the Vince, Henry and Biscuit, two guys, also very experienced. And well, there was not very much acting on the Psycho crew. You have the gray gloves and black gloves and the Vogelman. I mean, there was acting, but as the characters were as they were, so there wasn't much work for those three actors. And of course, the Carpenter, she was, playing this, mother, for who was very hard to go to work because she still want to be with the child, and which is very understandable, because actually, what I understand, after 3 months, she already went to work. Usually mother is with the child at least 1 year. Mm-hmm. And because she's got the higher salary, she went to work after right after 3 months. She went to work, so it was nice acting too, and also all the supporting characters. Udo Kier was excellent with his elaborated English, like with the German accent. It was really nice scene. And also the buying the ring. It was very, very nicely directed, and also the crew was very experienced and did a really nice job. So I have nothing against the acting in this movie.
Okay.
I think the crew was excellent.
Yeah, well, I guess we pretty much all agree on the cast here, so there's not really any controversy. So I suppose we'll just move on then to the plot and story. So who would like to go first?
Do you want to, Rasto?
Sure, I can. Plot and story. I think Zahler is author of the story. I don't think it was based on any kind of book or novel or something.
No.
So I think the Zahler is a very good writer, very real, and also it was very interesting. I forgot to say this about the acting. It was very interesting that he didn't go to the much emotions. You cannot see some bursts of anger or unnecessary. It's very calm. It's very calm, and
that's right.
You can observe the inner emotions. That was very nicely done. So the movie is kind of calm, but you can see all those happening inside of the character.
Right. Yeah.
So many movie makers, they tend to get the characters to cry, to yell, to I don't know what, to express the emotions outside. But in this movie, this was very interesting. The characters were all calm, but you could see all the happening is happening inside, in their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So this was very interesting. And I go back to story. Story was, like I said, very systematic, very realistic, and unpredictable. That's why it was interesting, I mean, this is not the first time in the movie this kind of story. It's not the first time, but he did it very well, and he took a completely different approach. I mean, you have plenty of movies with dirty cops who's trying to, make some money, but you have also the background stories. You have a guy who is 30 years with force, and he's still, he's still on the street. He doesn't have any nice job, and his first partner, he's already chief lieutenant. Also you have the guy whose wife is seriously ill. She's got multiple sclerosis, and they live in some crappy neighborhood. They can afford to buy a house in the better, environment.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you have the guy who's trying to maybe to have more money. Simply, he's trying to catch up with his girlfriend. Like Laura City character. Yeah, because like Ken said, the girl is professional. She makes lots of money, and he's trying to make more. So you see, you have reasons why they why they starting to do what they started to do. That was the last drop. The suspension was the last drop to their desires. Like secret desires, I would say.
Right.
So that's why the story is maybe the same like 100 others, but there is a different approach. So you have the psychological study of the characters. Why did they do that? So that's why it's quite different, and the story even though not unique, but very well written. That's my opinion on the story.
Yeah, I found that they were doing the same story, as you say, but from a different perspective, I would say. A perspective that's not normally seen in a lot of films today, or even maybe even in the past. There's one thing that I found a bit surprising. Now, I'm just going to say spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can just skip over this section. But the ending for me was a bit of a surprise that the two main characters didn't survive. And I thought for sure Mel Gibson was going to survive. But then I got to thinking, Mel Gibson, for some reason, dies a lot at the end of his movies. Or it's implied that he dies at the end of his movies.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he has a death wish. And I mean, we all know. I mean, maybe we all don't know, but Mel Gibson has had a history of well, we'll say, I'm not going to say depression, but something strange going on in the background, and he did separate with his wife as well. And there's been some. I think me and Ken had this conversation a few days ago already, but there was some issues there. So maybe some of that is coming out in his acting style, and maybe he somehow convinced the director to let himself be killed off at the end of the movie. So hey, to take it for what it's worth, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a decision on the part of Mel Gibson that his character be killed off at the end of the film. I mean, yeah, as you and I discussed, he's had some problems in the past. I mean, I don't want to go into them here. I mean, anyone who wants to know those facts can find out with their own research.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think he's maybe a bit. It's quite possible he's a bit more in touch with his darker side than some people are.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think. I'm pretty sure that was his character's fate was the way Zahler had it planned all along. I'm pretty certain.
Well, maybe it's possible that he decided to do this role simply like because of the way the plot played out and because of how dark the movie was.
Well, I'm sure he found it creatively satisfying, but I wouldn't want to get into any suggestion that he took that part because he has a death wish he'd like to see played out or anything like that. That's getting a little too deep psychologically for me. I would prefer to think that he took the role because he was satisfied with how the story played out and how the characters were treated. And I also wanted to say about Rasto's observation that everyone's performances were very restrained and not overly emotional. I think that's a very good point. I think it goes back to what I was saying about how we're walking side by side along the characters. And I think a lot of times in life, people are not given to grand operatic gestures. I mean, some people are, definitely some people are very dramatic, but most people are just trying to get through the day to day and just trying to hold their stuff together and not trying to keep up a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not all people, obviously, but I think a lot of people are facing a lot of pressure, like the characters in this film, and they're just trying to put a brave face on things. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think the character, as Rasto was saying, I think that's what a lot of people in this film are trying to do as well. Okay. You know, just get through the day to day, and not be overly emotional.
Okay. All right. So if there's no other comments on this, I believe we can move on to our overall rating and overall opinion. So who would, I guess, Ken will go first, I guess, and then I'll let Rasto go, and then I'll make my final comment.
Okay. My overall opinion is that it Dragged Across Concrete is a very deliberately paced but solid and unsettling crime thriller that makes you think, gives you reasons to think about modern life and struggles in society and between societal classes, without being too politically. They sort of don't get very politically correct. He's pretty unflinching in his vision.
Right.
The, I should say that some of the female characters in this film, they don't get treated very well. Some get away easier than others, but some of the female, there's some violence that might disturb some viewers that is directed toward, like, for one example, Jennifer Carpenter's character, she kind of suffers a pretty horrible demise.
Mm.
But again, I guess this is going back to the more realistic depictions of what happens in this sort of, I guess, struggle.
Human struggle.
Human struggle, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But in as Rasto was saying, there's not very many characters, full stop, who get away very easily.
Yeah, no one really gets away unscathed.
Not so much, no. But it's a very well done film, and I give it 8.5 out of 10.
8.5. Ooh, good rating.
Yes.
Good rating. Okay. All right, Rasto, go ahead with your overall opinion and your rating out of 10.
Thank you. I think I still talk about a little bit about the story. I think all those main characters, main protagonists, they kind of were having a death wish, all of them, because they touched very dangerous things. They're starting something very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why basically only one of the characters survives. That's what I think, because I mean, Ridgeman and also Lura City, they knew very well they're going to something very dangerous. They knew who was this Fogelman and his associates, So I think that was other thing that director wanted to say, like, if you touch something dangerous, you might die. If you touch some dangerous animal, if you go close to the lion cage, you might get grabbed, right? So I think that that was another point in this movie. But anyway, about the rating, very nice thriller, very nice neo-noir movie, B-movie, in category of B-movies. Very nice played, very nice directed, very nice effects, and very nice story. So I easily will confirm Ken's rating, and I give it, just to be different, I give it 8.7 out of 10.
8.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow. You like the movie more than Ken. That's surprising. Okay, very good, very good. Okay.
Hey, Stu, could I just want to go back to the whole Mel Gibson thing for 1 minute. I think it's a little bit, it's like you said, he doesn't appear on screen that often anymore. He's been in a few things in the past, but very low profile, limited distribution things, like Get the Gringo or Bloodfather or this film. I think it's a little bit strange how he's treated by Hollywood, because he is a very talented actor and director. And of course, I believe he was nominated for an Oscar for Hacksaw Ridge, but it seems like Hollywood only wants him to be in a director's chair. Like, it's okay when he's behind the scenes, but he sort of tends to get pushed back in the background or relegated to smaller screen or smaller distribution fare when he's actually acting. So It seems like on a level he's still not, like, some of the stuff he did was pretty untoward from what I understand, but it seems like there's a bit of a double standard going on with how they treat him. Because, I mean, I believe Robert Downey Jr. and Jodie Foster actually came out and stated support for him at a couple of points. Mm-hmm. But he still sort of seems to get shoved, in terms of his acting on screen, he seems to get shoved into the background sometimes.
Yeah, I'm going to 100% agree with you there. There's a double standard, and I have a number of theories on what is going on, and that's not something I can really discuss on the podcast, but I will mention this. He did do a major blockbuster back in 2003 called obviously The Passion of the Christ, where he basically,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows the movie, and I think after that movie he was blacklisted by Hollywood, and that's when things started to go downhill for him in his acting career, I believe. There was plans to do another movie of similar caliber, but because of, I guess, his personal problems, it never came to fruition as well. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But if you ever see me on the street, or Ken or Rasto, I guess, where you are right now, feel free to have that conversation with us. It's just not as suitable for a podcast. But yes, there's definitely a double standard there that should be, known, I think, anyways. And people can do the research on their own as well if they really want to find out what's going on. So, would you agree with me?
Well, I don't know about how if it's like a huge ranging conspiracy.
I'm not going to say it's necessarily a big conspiracy, but I mean, people will do things maybe intentionally or unintentionally.
Well, maybe out of spite, because they don't like the things in his past, which I do believe he's trying to make up for. He's trying to make up for stuff because, some of the things he did and said were very wrong, but I do believe he's trying to move on creatively, and It does seem strange that, like I said, I believe he was nominated for the Oscar for Hacksaw Ridge. But it doesn't seem like he gets recognition for his acting.
No,
as much as he used to.
No, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to give you my overall opinion then. So as I mentioned earlier, I did struggle with the first maybe third to one half of the movie, and I was almost kind of like, oh, I don't really want to watch the rest of this. But at a certain point in the movie, it started to, I don't know, I started to find it more enjoyable, and by the end I was like, okay, I'm glad I watched this. So with that said, I think the best points I found were obviously the development of the characters and the plot in general. And my negative points obviously were the lighting, which you two disagree with, but and the slow parts of the start. So for that reason, now just because I'm not going to give it a high rating like them doesn't mean I didn't like the movie, but I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. Now keep this in mind. When I give a movie a 6.5, it doesn't mean that I hate the movie or I think it was maybe could have been a lot better. I just find a lot of recent movies are very poor, so I might actually be giving them a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10. Like Marvel's Avenger, I probably would give believe it or not, I probably would give a similar rating to this movie, or maybe even less. So keep that in mind. So for me to get up into the 8.5s, it has to be like really, really good. So that's my opinion on it. All right. So I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the podcast. So I would like to thank Ken and Rasto for joining me today for this podcast. I think we enjoyed ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. And I'd also like to thank the viewers for listening or watching with us today. So we managed to get our podcast down to, we were a little long last time, but we're sitting around the hour mark, I believe, this time. So if you have any questions, please.
Thanks.
Yeah. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comment section on the YouTube video or the podcast page. You can also view or listen to more of these podcasts on our Facebook page. I do appreciate if you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel by using the watermark in the bottom right corner, or follow me on Twitter. You can also listen to these episodes on popular podcasting platforms such as Libsyn, iTunes, and Stitcher. Now, for a full list of these platforms, please see the description or visit our website at multimedia.ca/media channels. And I appreciate your support, and I hope you join us next time, because a single red ant could have done this podcast faster. Goodbye, everybody.